I want to speak briefly this morning before we have our keynote address in the first panel on the challenge of sustainable development in the next administration. And I thought I would do it in the way that I usually do these things, and that's a memo. So I thought I'd write a memo for the next president and read it aloud to you. It probably will change by the time we have the next president, but I wanted to give my thoughts. And the nice thing about writing memos, if they're good memos, they're short, because nobody reads past a couple of pages for a long memo, and that's also an advantage for you. So, a modest contribution, and the memo is called Peace Through Sustainable Development. This is a memo about achieving sustainable development, but more deeply, it is about achieving peace through sustainable development. Let me begin by outlining our three overriding foreign policy objectives, that is the U.S. foreign policy objectives, and the ways that the United States has been addressing those objectives in recent years. And this is very complementary to the special issue of, or the Economist's special report on American foreign policy in this issue. The three overriding goals of U.S. foreign policy are, first, to promote our national security, which is a threat from energy instability, global disease transmission, failed states and terrorism, and the manifold threats of climate change. Second, to promote our national economy, which is a threat from rising commodity scarcity such as energy and water, competition from abroad encroaching on U.S. industries, resource stresses such as drought in the U.S. South, natural hazards in the Gulf of Mexico, excess dependence on foreign capital, and third, to promote values of personal freedom, political accountability, safety of individuals, and human rights, all of which we support as universal values enshrined in the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. Let me summarize the Bush administration's approach to these issues. First, that our national security is best secured through a robust military approach, especially through anti-terrorist actions abroad and an enduring military presence in the Middle East and many other parts of the world. Second, that our overriding need for economic security is reliable access to Middle East oil, the lifeblood of the U.S. economy. Whenever that has been threatened in the past, as in 1953, 1974, 1979, 1990, or 2001, the U.S. must be ready and able to intervene militarily. Third, that our objectives are threatened by hostile regimes with anti-American ideologies, most importantly extreme Islamic fundamentalism. Moreover, middle powers like Russia, China, and India are opportunistic and ready to side with anti-American ideologues when it suits their purposes. We must therefore fight extremist powers and actively build coalitions of the willing to block the opportunistic actions of our opponents. I believe that these premises are all fundamentally flawed. Military approaches are incapable of providing security in a cost-effective manner. The U.S. cannot occupy or militarily dominate the Middle East except at a cost that will bring down the U.S. economy, inflame global opposition, and undermine our military defense. We will spend at least $1 trillion and possibly much more than that on the Iraq debacle, and without any lasting security benefits whatsoever. Moreover, these militarized approaches misunderstand the scale and nature of our security challenges. Most importantly, we are up against global ecological limits which did not exist even a generation ago. These limits are felt in climate change, growing scarcity of oil, land degradation, water scarcity, alarming declines in species abundance and biodiversity, increasing food insecurity, irreversible failures of ecosystem functions, and all exacerbated by rising demographic pressures worldwide, especially marked by massive numbers of unemployed young men in unstable and impoverished regions. National security in a peaceful world will require, among other things, vastly more energy resources on a global scale, low carbon emitting varieties of energy, vastly improved energy efficiency, a rapid diffusion of new technologies, many of which remain to be demonstrated, new approaches to the global food system in restraints on biofuels which compete directly with food supplies, protection of threatened habitats, restoration of degraded land, reductions of overhunting and overfishing, improved water management, and improved diets and industrial food processing for human nutrition. New global approaches to chemical uses such as fertilizers, pesticides, antibiotics, and non-degradable packaging materials, and a progressive stabilization of the world's population. These international challenges are felt acutely around the world and simultaneously by all regions of the world. There is no escape, no region that is outside of a shared global ecological threat. Water scarcity affects Phoenix, New Mexico, Atlanta, Georgia, Monterrey, Mexico, Darfur, Sudan, Kabul, Afghanistan, and Tehran, Iran. Soaring food prices affect Chicago and Shanghai. Heat waves are felt throughout the world. These ecological shocks are now positively correlated, meaning that losses in one region of the world are not generally offset by gains in another. For the first time in human history, local actions now have enormous and rapid global ramifications. Shocks quickly spill over national boundaries. Food and energy markets are now interlinked at a global scale. Consider today's Financial Times report, that is today's, on soaring rice prices, in which an Egyptian ban on rice exports, following bans on rice exports by India and Vietnam, led yesterday immediately to soaring rice prices in the Philippines and elsewhere in Asia, with growing threats of instability. Rice prices have nearly tripled in recent weeks. True approaches to these challenges will require a mix of new technologies and new approaches to social organization, notably in how we organize urban life and how we choose to feed ourselves. Strategic economic policy impels us to adjust in advance to these realities. The later we adjust to carbon constraints, fossil fuel limitations of various sorts, scarce water supplies, rising food prices, and other ecological limits, the later we adjust, the more likely we are to overshoot the ecological and resource boundaries, and the more likely we are to face a significant future decline in living standards. Also, the more likely it is that the world will spiral into a direct resource conflict. The economic winners of the 21st century, the early 21st century, will be the technological leaders and early adapters to the challenges of sustainable development. The U.S. can reap enormous economic gains through its technological prowess, but only if that technological prowess is channeled into sustainable technologies supported by public policies. General Electric's Eco-Imagination strategy shows on a company level what a national industrial policy for sustainable development might mean in terms of improved global options and expanding markets for U.S.-led technological approaches.